Guys, bali today, discuss natin yung basics ng linear programming. In terms of linear programming, you will be focusing on linear equations, kaya siya tinawag na linear programming. Meaning to say, linear equations, you will be having different set of variables which are the same in nature, but hindi tayo gagamit dito ng mga exponents so far. Kaya siya ay linear lang. Ibig sabihin, all exponents is equivalent to the raised to the first power lamang. Bali, in linear programming, you may use, basically in OR1, you may use two methods. First is you may use graphical method, yan. And you may, secondly, use simplex method or the mathematical method. What is the difference of the two? Graphical is a good kind of linear programming method kasi siya ay, we could say it's easier, it's faster, but the constraints here is you can only use graphical method having two variables only. Ano po yung ibig sabihin? You could only use graphical method if you only have two variables, x1 and x2. Kasi ang ating Cartesian plane or ang ating graphing could only accept or could only utilize two different variables lang, x and y lamang. Bali, if you will be having additional or more variables such as x1, x2, x3, so on and so forth, you could only use simplex. But this is not necessarily na kapag dalawang variables lang, bawal ka na mag-simplex. Kapag dadalawa yung variables, you could use simplex and graphical. What is the difference? This is a graphical type of computation. You will create graphs. And simplex is purely mathematical using matrices. Yan. Which was discussed during your advanced mathematics. Magiging step up lang siya. Ito. Yan. Bali, for this video, let's discuss graphical method. If you will be creating a linear programming model, regardless of anong nature niya, kung siya ay graphical or simplex, you need first to identify two different functions. You need your objective functions and your subjective function. You could not start computing by not having these two functions. Sabi nga nila, if you already found the objective function and the subjective function, you are already done. Tapos ka na, siguro mga 70% ng problem, tapos ka na. Kasi it's far more difficult to find the objective function and the subjective function. Ano po yung objective function and subjective function? Yung objective functions natin, yun yung goal nyo in solving the problem. Ano ba yung isosolve natin problem? It could be two ways, or it could be two kinds of objective function. You could have a maximization, and you could also have a minimization. Ano po yung ibig sabihin nun? If you will be considering maximization problem, pwedeng ang inyong problem is to maximize profit, to maximize capacity, to maximize sales, so on and so forth. Those are kinds of maximization problems. Ano naman yung mga minimization? If your target is to minimize cost, minimize defect, minimize area na na-occupy, yan, you may opt to use minimization. In terms of subjective function, ano naman yung subjective function? Ito yung mga constraints nyo. What are those constraints? Ano yung nakakasagabal kung bakit hindi tayo makapag-maximize or makapag-minimize? It could be capacity, it could be number of workers. Siyempre, gusto mo magbenta ng sobrang dami. Kaso, kakaunti yung tao mo. It's a factor. Hours, man-hours, number ng tao, number ng raw material. Yun yung mga subjective functions or constraints. Sa Tagalog, yun yung mga sagabal para hindi natin ma-meet yung ating objective functions. Kapag nakapag-formulate na tayo ng objective functions and subjective functions, we could graph it or we could create a simplex model to solve and to get the optimized value. But, ibig sabihin nun, pag hindi nyo nagawa ng ayos yung objective function and subjective function, it would be far more difficult for you to solve the problem. Yeah. Let's start creating and let's have an example.